allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Litster.
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos.
Here.
Councilmember Judge.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Here.
Mayor Mashburn.
Here.
Mayor and City Council members, the first item on the agenda is 1A for public statements. This is the time allotted for public statements or comments on all items other than public hearing items. And we do not have any public hearing items this evening. Thank you. I will call the first, well, actually we have 4 speakers this evening, so I will call you in the order of the cards received. Don Otto, Josie Hirsch, Greg Litster, and Rick Shaw.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council people. I just found out about this meeting about an hour ago, so I apologize for my t-shirt and shorts. But I'm really concerned because I heard that we're about to hire another management level position for the city at the expense of $150,000 plus. I can't figure out, with all of our financial problems that we have here in the city, why are we adding a high-paid management position? We already have lots of management positions in the city, and a conservative solution would be to consolidate some positions and fold that new position into an existing employee. Now, it baffles my mind that we're talking about this on a Thursday afternoon instead of in a normal city council setting where more people could attend and speak their opinions. I would hate to see a group organize that's called Empty the Simi Valley Swamp, but I think we may need it. We cannot continue the status quo in this city. We're broke or near broke, and how can we continue to add staff to a staff that already needs some evaluation? About 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, there was a company that offered their services for free to evaluate the city's staff positions and the efficiency. Now, I haven't heard anything about that, but perhaps someone on the council can look into that and find out why we didn't exercise that free service. We obviously need it. The thought that we're going to spend more money in these times where we're searching high and low for more revenues for the city, and we're going to hire someone else. I'm baffled by it, and I hope that the rest of the council here is baffled also. You have to stop these practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Josie Hirsch, and I'm an active voting member of the Simi Valley community. I'm going to second what Mr. Otto said. I agree with him 100% on every item. What I wanted to share with you was a little bit different. Talking about hiring policy. I come from a corporate environment where the board of directors then selects a president of the organization, and that president brings with them their key people and people that they trust to move on. We currently have an interim city manager, but we do not have somebody who is permanently appointed to that position until the council determines so. We elected you in November, and we, as a community, decided that you were the ones that we wanted to have make this decision for us, how our city runs. The council has taken a step to be a lot more transparent. They're very open to the community. You listen anytime anybody wants to speak to you. You are always available to us. And I don't think that it is right for an interim position to be determining who's going to fill senior staffing positions throughout the organization. I think we need something a little more permanent, whether it's Mr. Gabler or it's somebody from externally. We shouldn't be letting the interim position in any department be hiring people underneath them. There is amazing talent out there, whether it's in our city or not, and we've all learned there are people we work well with and people we don't. So whoever steps into the city manager's position, whether it's Mr. Gabler or someone else, should be able to choose who does a position. Right now, I kind of second Mr. Otto with what he said about using the resources we currently have. We have several senior open positions. Why not take a current staff member and make them interim and see if they fit while we look at our other options? But for policy's sake, I don't know that any permanent hiring should be done when there's an interim manager in place trying to fill a position below them without council approval and agreement. So in short, if you're filling a position underneath an interim manager, I do believe the council should have a say on who that person is. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for you to call my name. Oh, okay. I'm Greg Litster. I got an email about this meeting, so I went to the website to see what the agenda was. And when I went to the website, I discovered that there is an announcement that our interim city manager had hired an environmental services director, a director level. It's a $150,000 a year job plus benefits. Going to cost the city $180,000. For 7 years, I've been talking about the budget. And Brian has been here every single time I've talked about this budget deficit. We can't afford this kind of stuff. I've talked about consolidating department heads, just like what Don Otto has spoken about. And it is, though, it's just, I might as well be talking to the wind. It is inconceivable. Now, yesterday I had hernia surgery. Thought there's one, discovered there's two. But I thought it'd be worth my while, since this is, the thing I've been talking about, to get off my sickness bed and get over here and say a few things. And actually, the doctor is really, really good. I'm really not in pain. I'm faking a lot of it, but I am walking slower. Now, the doctor here, I'm turning this in so you have this, Ali Chieto from Simi Hospital here. Excellent. He's done 8,000 of these things. No pain. 3 cuts. So I'm going to, just so you have this, so somebody else who looking forward to this, because everybody's going to have this happen to them. Anyway, Mayor, you ran on when you ran for mayor, you ran on a platform of transparency and fiscal prudence. This hire sends the wrong message. It sends the wrong message to the taxpayers. It sends the wrong message to the SEIU, to the POA, that basically it's business as usual. Forget what the mayor talks about. Forget all this fiscal prudence. We're going to just do it the way we've always done it. That is the wrong message. The message that needs to be sent is, no, we're not doing it this way. The concern I have also, Brian, you made this selection. And, I like you, Brian. Everybody likes you. You're a wonderful guy. But from a council viewpoint, how can you have confidence in budget negotiations with somebody who doesn't care about the fiscal state of the city? I mean, that's the real concern that I have now. What's next? My recommendation is, I have a lack of confidence. 3 votes, and get a different interim. And I also think that you should rescind this offer that has been made. Maybe you get sued, maybe you don't. But she could rescind her resignation. And if Oxnard won't take her back, that also tells us something. If Oxnard won't take her back. We don't want somebody that nobody else won't take back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name is Rick Shaw. I'm here today to talk about the expanding city and the overcrowdedness and how dangerous it's become on our highways and roadways. If you're sitting at a red light and cars are turning in front of you to make a left-hand turn, and your light turns green, you better hold on because and not go, because there's going to be 3 or 4 people that are going to turn in front of you. Speeding, if you go down any one of our streets and there's not bumper-to-bumper traffic like on Madera, then these people are doing 55 and 60 miles an hour down streets like Township and Alamo. It's unbelievable how dangerous it is. I mean, for God's sakes, we've got crossing guards being run down. It's absolutely ridiculous, the population growth and the number of cars we have on the streets. I talked to Councilmember Judd, and he mentioned that the state is pushing you guys, bullying you guys into more building, more people. This would be your projected population growth, and you guys are falling in line like all the other smaller cities that are being threatened by the state that they're going to hold back funds and do all these other mean things to you. But the fact is that LA and all the other major cities are useless. They don't know what to do with their population, and it's out of control. The state has not had a good idea about what to do with their population. Not everybody can move to California. Not everybody can live in Simi Valley. I want to live in Huntington Beach. I can't live there. It's just too expensive for me. So what I'm asking you to do is to band with the other small cities and stand up against the state and say, we're only this big. This is it. We were set up as single-family residences. I moved here in the middle 70s, grew up in LA, born and raised, escaped to the San Fernando Valley, and on my way, I saw city after city that just became apartments and condos and overpopulated, and they're toilets now. I don't want to see that happen to Simi Valley. A lot of good people that live in Simi Valley now and some have already left because of where we're headed. And the people in the neighborhood that I live in, your old neighborhood, are mostly seniors who have invested a lot of time and money in their single-family homes, and now the state is saying that you'll build condos and affordable housing, and you'll take in all these refugees from everywhere. Well, I'm hoping that you'll work with the other cities and try and work something out that the state won't be able to extort you guys, and that's what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker for this evening. The next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, is 1B, Council Comments regarding the public statements.
Are there any comments? Council? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, the one comment I will make is that
Oh, I thought you were pointing at me. I'm sorry.
No, because I usually let Elaine go first.
she was looking at me, and I said I'd make no comments. The one comment I will make is that husband, wife, think independently, just for the record. I'm just making that very, very clear. And he was ordered to stay home in bed. So that's all. That's all I'm saying.
And that is true.
Okay, thank you. That's a given.
I have one brief comment. Happy wife, happy life.
I want to thank you for coming out here. It was it's early. We're all rushing here. Clearly, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh was rushing here. We were all rushing to get here, especially Councilwoman Kavanaugh and I, who have full-time day jobs. So thank you for those of you who came out here, who made the sacrifice to do so. I know that it's hard for people to get here during the day because people work during the day, so I appreciate you coming and engaging in the democratic process. I always encourage our residents to do so. And even if you can't get here, for those of you who are watching on TV, and I do know that we have residents watching this on TV, send emails, bring letters. There are other ways to participate if you can't get here. I get being a working parent because I am one, so I completely understand that. And Mr. Shaw, I just wanted to address your concern regarding the traffic and the congestion, and just know that, whenever we have developments and whenever we have higher density, I'm usually the one bringing up, traffic patterns and looking at scrambled crosswalks and looking at public transit and looking at, all the ways that we can reduce traffic congestion and how we can, and I know that Councilman Judge is on the SCAG committee and looks at, the traffic congestion and public transportation. So those are all things that go hand in hand. So we never look at development without looking at how these people are going to get here, whether it's an apartment building or a condo or residences. We always take into account the traffic impact, and we do encourage and are trying, to encourage public transportation as much as possible, as well as bikeways, pathways, walkways, scrambled crosswalks, to encourage people and to not use their cars as often and to reduce the amount of traffic, so carpooling and things like that. So just so you know, we are aware of the traffic congestion issues, and we do work very hard to ensure that we can reduce the usage of cars. Not only is it, dangerous in terms of, how many cars and how fast they're going, but we also want to take care of our environment, and we want to make sure that pedestrians are safe and that people want to ride their bikes and ride their skateboards, and that we are a car-free friendly city as well. And just so you know, we are in the top 250 cities in the country. We are considered a large city by any means, whether you Google it or Wikipedia it or look up in the League of Cities. We are considered a large city. We're not. I was shocked. We're not medium or small. We are a large city. We have a small town feel because we're so united, and we all help each other. And I love that about Simi Valley. But we are, approaching 130,000. So I just want to let you know that.
Yeah, any other comments? Okay, next.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda, actually it's the first item on the agenda of business, is Agenda Item 2A, discussion and possible action regarding city employment policies, including director-level positions, and interim city manager Brian Gabler is here for this presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council requested to hold a special meeting to discuss policies and procedures regarding the hiring of some city employees. Very briefly, we put a quick staff report together, mostly to provide the City Council some information. What is attached to the report is attachment A is the powers and duties of the city manager. Attachment B identifies the at-will, or what as we call executive level positions in the city. And attachment C will provide some information regarding recruitment, appointment, and promotion from the city's management handbook, policy number 7. And then lastly, I asked our Human Resources Division to provide a memo that describes the recruitment process for the executive level positions. It's generally the same for most positions. It doesn't deviate too much, but it gives you the step-by-step of what we normally do to go through the recruitment process to fill a position. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions?
Am I going first? Okay. I read through the report, and I echo the concerns of the comments that were made. We have to ensure that we are being fiscally responsible. The wage gap keeps increasing and increasing in this country, everywhere. In Simi Valley, everywhere else that we go, we have a homelessness issue that is increasing because the wage gap is increasing. And even working 2 or 3 jobs, there are still people that cannot afford rent. And this city works because of the staff that we have here. From the janitor, from George, who makes sure that the trash is taken out, to our bus drivers, to our administrative staff. And the truth is, without those who are in the field doing the good work that makes the city run, the city does not run. We can sit up here as city council members and have influence over policy and making policy and things like that, but we're not the ones who implement the policy. We're not the ones who see it through. It's the people who come here every day, who drive the buses every day, who pick up the trash every day, who make sure that the city runs. those are the heart of the city of Simi Valley, and they're the ones who make the city run. And, we have a wage gap in certain areas where we're not meeting the needs of our workers. And it is difficult, and I'm saying this as a teacher who is in the trenches. Our employees are in the trenches in the same regard that I, as a teacher, am in the trenches in the classroom. So I'm the one that every time they cut or impose new obligations or positions, I'm the teacher in the classroom who is having to fill out those mandates with fewer and fewer and fewer resources. So I completely understand the position in which many of our employees feel that more is being put on their tables with fewer and fewer resources, and then you see that you have higher up administrators who are getting these big paychecks. And you sit there and wonder, why can't you pay me $5 more an hour? Or why can't you, continue to give me my benefits when you just hired, a superintendent that makes, $600,000 a year? And so I understand the equity issue, and I understand that, we need to make sure that we are doing right by our employees, that we're being equitable, that we are being fair, that we are not just being transparent, but accountable as well, and making sure that everything is done to the benefit, to increase the outcomes of positive benefits for our community members. And that includes our employees who work so hard and have been doing more and more every day with less and less resources. And trust me when I say that I hear you, I see you, and I completely understand, because that is what I am asked to do every day in the classroom. And so in terms of equity and in terms of making sure that we are being fiscally responsible, that we are ensuring the policy that was set forth, and some of the policies that I did see was that there would be, and I understand we do want the best qualified people for the positions, but I did also see in our policy set forth that, there was a preference to promote current city employees, and so I guess my question is related to that in terms of, how does that relate to the pension issue? Because I am aware that there are higher level city employees that will, get a job in a city and they'll work there for 5 or 10 years, and then they'll say, okay, I'm maxed out, let me go somewhere else for a little more pay and then see if I can, bump my pension up more. And I know as a resident of 18 years in Ventura County that I read the Ventura County Star newspaper that comes out every year that tells you who are the top paid people in Ventura County. And I always see city manager, city attorney, police chief, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. So as a resident and as a city council member who's representing the residents of this community, I have to ask the question, how does this impact us in terms of pensions if we do hire someone outside as opposed to inside? And does that increase, is that fiscally responsible to do that? If we can hire someone from within that can serve a number of purposes, which includes fulfilling the policy of giving preference to promote current city employees. So fulfilling the policy that we have set forth of preference, not increasing our pension liability, and also boosting morale. I know when I see a coworker that is promoted or lifted or acknowledged, it gives me hope to stay where I'm at. Yes, I had a tough day today at school, but look, Brenda was recognized as, the inspirational teacher of the year. How wonderful that is to know that she has that recognition and that maybe someday I'll be in that position. Does that make sense? So I guess that's what my question is. I'm not saying we always have to hire from within, because we do need to make sure we hire the most qualified person, but that's one of my questions. So do you want all my questions, or do you want one at a time?
I'll take a shot at that one.
Okay.
We'll start there. So I'm actually a big believer in promoting from within. I think it's important that our employees understand that they have the ability to move up through the organization. It's also important to have a strategic plan that as we're dealing with retirements in the city, that we can fill those, we can have people move up. So I personally am a big believer in that process. The positions that have recently been filled at the director level, the recruitment started last year. So it takes that long actually to get someone into the position. We do keep track of what our costs are and how it affects us. And in fact, we are eliminating one department in the city, which is going to save us considerable amount of money. as we look at how the city needs to right-size itself. So we have taken that into consideration. But at least as long as I'm at least interim city manager, I believe in promoting from within.
So the other part of the question was, you know, I know that it's happening because, you know, because I've seen it in the Ventura County Star, and I know people who work for the city, including my brother-in-law, who's an assistant city manager, who will they'll stay at a city for a certain amount of time, and then they'll, for 5 years, 10 years, however amount of time, and then they'll go, okay, I've maxed out here. Let me go somewhere else that offers higher pay, and I can get a better pension. And then is that other city then on the hook for that pension as well? How does the pension obligation work in terms of someone who transfers there? And so that's my question.
Yeah, so, you know, honestly, I've been with the city for almost 34 years. I really haven't seen a lot of that action happen in the city. I know it does take place. I can't deny it. In public sector, people are always looking to maximizing their pension, and they'll move around. But in all honesty, I haven't seen that much in Simi Valley. And that really goes to the fact that we've had so many retirements over the last year with long-term employees. So I think that speaks to that. In reference to your direct question is, yes, cities do deal with that when you have an employee leave and go to another agency that may make more money. There is a little bit of an inequity where the cities kind of share in that overall, as they call it, single highest year. But you know, if we are able to pay our employees an equitable amount, they won't leave. Now, we just did, in 2017, we just did a full compensation study of every single position in the city and how it compared with the comparable cities that we compare ourselves to. There's a dozen cities. That went to the council, I believe, in August of 2017. And generally, we are competitive when you look at total compensation. There are several positions that are much lower than where they should be, and that's one of the goals that we would have is to try and make those positions equitable. But we believe that we have a fair salary range based upon the city's budget and how we accommodate that.
So, okay, and I'm going to ask for your indulgence here to explain it to me. Because the way, I'm a public employee and I work for LAUSD, so when I retire, if I retire this year, I'll have 20 years in, and I decide I want to work for Conejo Valley Unified. So is it a percentage? Is it, you know, like, how does it work? Because, you know, my retirement is different because it's, you know, it's statewide. So how does the retirement work? If I work, let's just suppose I work for the city of Whittier, and I worked there for 10 years as an assistant city manager, and then I decide to take a job that pays significantly more, has a better, you know, total package. And by total package, you know, benefits and salary and all that. And I decide to come here to Simi Valley, and I get paid significantly more, or the benefits package is more, the total. Who incurs the pension obligation now when they retire? Is it the city of Simi Valley, or is it the city of Whittier, or is it split up?
It is split. They're all paying their proportional share.
Okay, but since they're getting paid more when they come, if they get paid more here, because no one, in general, people don't usually move jobs to take a pay cut. In
Right.
general, people will, there are some exceptions to the rule if you want to, you know, if your spouse is moving or if the benefits package is better even though the salary is lower. So there are reasons why people, right, might take lower compensation. But in general, people will go because they want a higher pay. So we would be on the hook for a higher pension obligation.
We could potentially be. I don't profess to be the expert in PERS. That's more of that's a single-purpose PERS question that I would want to research to get a full answer, but my understanding is that there would be, even with our contributions based upon the salary that they work for us, I believe if they went to another agency and made more money, there may be some override that our city would need to cover as a part of that. It's one of those inequities that happens in PERS with member agencies.
Okay, and then my other question, thank you for answering that question. My other question is, you know, with regards to the compensation, that's always a reason that's given is, well, if you pay your employees well, then you'll be able to meet the pension obligations because you're paying them well, and so they're paying into the pension system. But what happens is you get people who are senior, who have more seniority, who have more experience, and they're inevitably going to, have more pay because they come in with more experience and more seniority, so they get paid more. But what happens is you have the situation at which we're at right now, where we have a lot of senior employees who are experienced employees, I don't want to say senior, experienced employees who are retiring because they've been here for so long, because this has been the place where they've wanted to be and work, and that's a great thing about us, right? That says a lot about Simi Valley. But at the same time, the new recruits or new hires that we're getting, they're not always younger, and the younger employees that we hire, while they have less experience, they will be here for a longer period of time. Then you have the longevity of who is paying into that system, who's paying into the pension system for a longer period of time. And so, you have to have a balance in that. And I understand that we have some cost savings by reducing departments, but what happens when you reduce departments is that imposes more responsibility and more, obligations on the employees who are left to fulfill those responsibilities. We haven't lowered the level of service that we have. We still have that level of service. I still have to fulfill all my duties in the classroom as a teacher, but if they're saying, hey, now you also have to co-teach, special ed students as well, then that's a responsibility I have to do. It's not, I don't get compensated anymore for doing that. It's just more responsibility. So when we collapse departments, it doesn't mean that there's less work, because we still want to provide the same level of high service to our residents, but it just means that someone else somewhere has to pick up the slack. Correct?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, in what we are doing here at in Simi Valley, we're eliminating the community services department. So that eliminates a department head level position and administrative assistant level position. Everyone else that is in that department just gets moved to other departments. So they're still doing the job that they were doing. They're just doing it now in another department. So I don't think we'll have any degradation in the service that we're providing because of the changes that we're providing. The changes we're making, I think they're just moving to another department. They may report to a different supervisor, but they're still doing the same job that they were doing. So we're not adding any more tasks to what they were doing prior to the department being intact, the one we're eliminating.
Okay, so when we shift or move departments or when we cease to hire, right, because that's what we do hiring freezes.
We do hiring freezes.
When someone retires, we're just not going to hire for that position. So who takes over the responsibilities of that person who retires? So let's just say you had a department where you had 10 employees and 3 of them retired, and now there's 7 employees left, and you have a hiring freeze for the 3 that left, right? So then those 7 employees have to take on the responsibility of what used to be the job of 10 people. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a different instance. I mean, in this instance, we're eliminating a department head, so another department head would take on that role. If we have, for lack of a better term, a street crew that has 10 members, 3 of them retire, we'll analyze the performance and effectiveness of the crew. Does it need to be 10? Can we get away with 7 and still do the service? Can we only hire 1 more or 2 more and leave one of the positions frozen? We would have to analyze the performance of that division and whether we would really need to refill the 3 retired positions. And we would do that on a regular basis.
Would there also be, and therein lies my concern, because what tends to happen in public entities is that we say, okay, how effective is it? And you look at the people, shall we say in the trenches, I like that term, who are doing the job and say, like you said, can we get away with having 7 as opposed to 10? And we don't always look at the management who is above that, running it. And so it's difficult as someone who is laying out the gravel or the pavement or whatever the job is, cleaning up the trash, when you haven't gotten a raise and now you have more responsibilities. Now you have to clean 10 offices instead of 5 because they've cut the number of people that are in that department. And yet you see someone new that's coming in, or someone who's been there who's now getting this raise. Or someone new comes in and they come in and with, look at the person with their fancy new car getting their 6-figure salary, and meanwhile now we have to clean twice as many offices. So that is the issue, are we looking at management? And I always use the example of sports because people like sports analogies, that if the Lakers are losing, the first person they fire is the coach. They don't fire the players, right? They don't fire the basketball players. They don't say, hey, we're going to fire the basketball players. There may be some basketball players that are not playing well, but in essence, they're looking at the management. Who is managing it?
Right.
And are they mismanaging it? And if you need new players, you get new players. But the issue is, there has to be some equity there in terms of how are we running things so that we are not burdening our employees and that we are making things equitable. And promotion is one of the ways that you can increase, and increase motivation and morale among staff. And I know that because I live it every day.
Yeah, I will tell you that now we're going through the budget process for next year. We were presenting a balanced budget to the City Council. We have frozen a number of positions. I can tell you, I dare to give you a percentage, but a high majority of those positions are management level positions that we're freezing. Management level positions are on the table just as much as any other position. They're all on the table. And it's really the delivery of the service and the effectiveness of us delivering that service that we're looking at. But like I said, you will see as we present it, as we present the budget to you, that the majority of the positions, I would say most of the positions that are frozen are management level positions.
Okay, my next question is about the provisional appointment. It's on page 11, section 7.19, where, and this is addressing the issue that Ms. Hirsch brought up. Ms. Hirsch, I'm sorry. She suggested that, how do you have an interim filling permanent positions of directors? And it does say in that provision, a provisional appointment shall be a maximum of 6 months in the absence of an appropriate eligibility list, and that's a part where we can amend. A provisional appointment may be made by the appropriate department head with the approval of the deputy director of a person meeting the minimum qualifications. Then it says a provisional appointment shall be for a maximum of 6 months. That can be amended. The employee must successfully complete and be placed on an eligibility list prior to regular appointment. If an employee is not successful, separation will be automatic at the end of the 6-month period or when the position is filled, whichever comes first. So is that a possibility or solution in terms of us making policy? And this is not, specific to you, like, Mr. Litzler said, everyone loves you, Brian. We all, you're a very likable person. But with regard to, the position and the perception of, having an interim city manager, having permanent positions. My understanding is the interim, the environmental services position, director position had been open for a while.
Yes.
And it hadn't been filled for a while. And I know when I got elected, I asked, like, what's going on with that position? When is it going to be filled? And, I understand that it takes time and, to put it out there and ask. And I know it's going to take us time to find, a permanent city manager. So I understand that because I've been in the position of hiring. But, is this a provision that we can use, that we could modify so that when we are in the situation like we're in right now of having an interim city manager, that we can say, okay, if we do need someone to fill this position, if we cannot leave it vacant for whatever reason, another 5 months or 6 months or however long it's going to take us to get a permanent city manager, could we do a provisional appointment? And that way it's not so permanent.
So let me see if I can follow. So the position that we fill, the Director of Environmental Services, the position opened up, we began the recruitment in November of last year. So as the interim city manager, I just followed through the recruitment that was already in place, that was already taking place. So I basically finished that process. You fired me to be the interim city manager, and I would expect you want me to do my job, and I would see that filling this position, I see it as a necessary position in the city. It is an executive level position. It's running a very critical department, and because of the elimination of the community services department, it's actually taking on additional responsibilities. So I see that position as a very critical position that needed to be filled by a qualified candidate. So we finished that process. Whether I'm interim or not, like I said, you've put me in the position to do the role of the city manager, and that's what I did by filling that position, which I thought was critical to the city.
So I guess I'm asking you to put your, and I know it's weird to say, hey, put yourself outside of the shoes in which you're in right now. But if you can put yourself outside of the shoes in which you're in right now, if we're looking at another city, at another interim city manager in the city of Fantasyland, I don't know, whatever, would that be a feasible policy to say an interim city manager will not, have a permanent director of a department, that they would just be a provisional appointment?
It would be unusual.
Is that-
In the world of city management, it would be unusual to not have an interim city manager make an appointment.
Permanent appointments?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I know I didn't ask you this question before tonight, so are you aware if anyone else does that?
I am
If
not.
any other city does that?
I am not.
Okay.
Oh, well, let me qualify. Does what?
Have a
Have a
provisional appointment?
restriction?
Or they just have, while we have the interim city manager, we're just not going to shift things. And I understand the reasoning for that is because you're in limbo. The interim city manager may become the permanent city manager, but they may not. And so you don't want someone who's interim making permanent decisions. And I have been in this position on the board of directors that I served, where we had an interim executive director, and they were kind of like the placeholder. And they did run the organization for a year, but no permanent decisions were made. And then everything was, under the guidance of the board of directors, much like, the city council serves, right, as a policymaker. So, in that case, permanent positions were not set forth because we wanted to make sure that we had the input of the board of directors, knowing that the board of directors would have the institutional knowledge and probably more longevity of being around than just the executive director who was only there for a year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the city council sets policy. If the city council wants to set that policy, you're more than happy to do so. And we will follow through whatever policy the city council sets.
In my understanding, this provisional appointment falls in the place where you don't have to post a position. That's what it's usually used for, correctly?
Yes, yes.
Because normally you would post a position, you have to go through all the trials. This allows you to possibly place a qualified employee in there without posting the position, and then they have the opportunity to meet the needs, and if they are, they're successful, they're good.
They can be, yes. I mean,
That's-
and in this position, we've had an acting director for
Yes.
that position anyway. So
Yes.
we've followed through with that.
Okay, that's how I would do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm going to get specific with that position specifically because you mentioned that, you're collapsing another department into that position. So, I would think that we would want to either continue the interim until it gets folded into that, someone who has an understanding, right, of how it is that you fold that other department, the community services, into that department, someone who knows, what community services entails here in the city of Simi Valley, because community services in the city of Simi Valley is different than it is in Santa Paula or Ojai or Oxnard or Ventura or any other city. So, I guess it's difficult for me to see, appointing someone permanently without giving an opportunity for the permanent city manager to have a say.
Through this recruitment, we have let the candidates, when we were going through the interviews, we've known that we were going to collapse this department. Now, only part of the department is going into environmental services. We have let candidates know that this was, the role would be expanded to include these other areas. So we had that in our minds, the interview, at least the second interview panel, of how we move forward in that appointment.
Well, and I guess my concern is what Mrs. Hirsch had mentioned, that, when city managers tend to come and they come with their own people, right? They want to, the superintendent gets hired and I want to bring my people, I want to bring my, and this happens in my district all the time. They get a new superintendent, we get all new management people. They get rid of the old, they bring in the new. And so, I guess the concern for me, again, is with regard to, are you bringing in people who have knowledge or who are going to seek the knowledge of the people who know what that entails, and that's shifting. So you can say in an interview, do you understand that that we're collapsing this, part of this department into your division? And they'll say, And they may say, if I were being interviewed, I'd say, well, yes, I do. But I may not know who to talk to. I've only been elected for 4 months, and I'm still, asking, who do I talk to about this or that issue? So someone who's brand new, and who's now a director, who do you ask and who do you talk to, and who has institutional knowledge that's going to help guide you in that regard? And that's where a provisional appointment might be good as well, to see, are they going to be able to handle that? And that's the comment that I'm making. So it's not so much a question to you, but a comment to the city council, to my fellow council members, the mayor pro tem and the mayor, in terms of, is that a policy that we should consider? I think it is a policy that we should consider, because I think it makes sense in terms of maintaining the institutional knowledge that we have, and knowing how Simi Valley works, knowing, like the comment was made by Mr. Shaw, that the sensation that we're a small city, even though we're a large city and we have a lot of employees and we still have a lot of things that we need to do for our near 130,000 population and possibly growing. And how do we meet those needs while still having the closeness, right, of a tight-knit community that we are? And I guess that's what I'm asking for, is to ensure that we maintain that integrity and those services. And that's what I'm asking the rest of the city council to consider in terms of our employment policy, is could we shift this, provisional appointment, so that we're in the situation where we happen to be right now, and we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation, of how long we're going to have an interim. And this is not specific to Mr. Gabler specifically, but just in general, because you never know when you're going to be in a position where you have to have an interim, for how long it's going to be. And if it is a position, like Mr. Gabler stated, that you have to fill it right away, could we make that provisional? Is that a policy? I think it's a sound policy in terms of making it provisional for that reason. I understand the reasoning why it's put in there, but I'm saying in terms of being able to make sure that we have the right people in the right places making the right decisions, that we could have that kind of provision.
Okay.
Do you, no one? Yeah, I'm just asking for
I don't
comments from
think
the rest
that
of
was
the
a
city council.
question. That's why.
Yeah. Because we're here to set policy, right?
Yes.
To change the policy that we
Yes.
have. And so that's one of the suggestions I'm making. Do you need a motion, or how do we need to report back, ask staff to change the language of the policy that we have set forth? I can make a motion right now.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please, because I think a question to
So Michael-
legal is appropriate there, because to make a motion to change that policy, is that appropriate at this time?
You can also invite further comments from your colleagues and see if there's a
Okay,
consensus.
Will you hold that and let everybody have an opportunity to comment, and then don't forget what your motion is?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Other comments, questions?
And this is the question porn, or is it questions and comments, or questions? Because I do have some questions on his report, and then I'm happy to put comments in it, but
Okay, let's do both.
okay, just some questions. Read through everything here carefully. Appreciate it, Brian. You're preparing this. I know this was very last minute or short term to have to do so. I recognize that this says you have lots of autonomy, that basically the interim gets, or that the city manager has because these are at-will employees, you have the right to hire and fire at will, basically, just as we have the right to hire and fire you at will, basically. Is that correct, if I'm reading this correctly? Yes. It doesn't say anything specifically about city council participation in the process, but what are your thoughts about that? Because as I understand it, we have, and help me with the structure here, Brian, we have 5 directors positions underneath you, but it's been collapsed to 4. Is that correct?
Correct.
And one was hired just as Eric was leaving, was hired back in March before he left. And then there's this position that has not come forward. So 50% of our, so these are, and directors don't get hired generally with a lot of frequency. They tend to be in position, they stick around for a while. So what are your thoughts about city council participating, or at least being part of the interview process, or getting to vet that person, because this is such a critical role for our city?
I wouldn't have a problem with that at all if council members would want to participate and provide their advice to the city manager through the recruitment process. If you look at the kind of the procedure, I guess, on when would that happen, page 13, perhaps as part of the second interview process, after the initial interview process, but as part of the second interview process, provide your input. I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Okay, and so, certainly we sit on a lot of committees. So this would just be one more very interesting, important, probably one of the more important committees that we could be part of.
Sure. Probably wouldn't happen very often, though.
Correct, if it was just at the director level. What if we took it to department heads as well? So the director level, and then just the immediate heads underneath them, say planning department head or whatever. Could we participate in that?
Sure. So looking at page 5 are the at-will employees. You could certainly apply it to that list.
Okay. And has there been any precedent for that in the history? Has the city council participated in the past? Like, for instance, the chief of police, have they been involved at all in the selection before?
It has happened in the city. I believe it happened with at one time, the last community services director. I believe Mayor Mashburn participated on and provided his input to the city manager on that appointment. I know that the mayor at the time, Mayor Huber, and at the time, Mayor Pro Tem Judge participated with the city police chief selection. So though that it has happened in the city, and certainly could happen as policy on any one of these, all or any one of these at-will positions.
So we could make that, if we wanted to discuss that as a possibility, that could be.
Yes.
Why, in this instance, did you think at all about maybe conferring with the council at all about, in the most recent appointment that you made, was there any thought about that or any value to that?
The timing was such that the second interview happened on March 14th.
Okay.
We did background check on March 20.
Did you background check all of them, or did you?
We did. Well, no. After the second interviews took place, and the city manager Levitt and myself were part of the second interview process.
So just the two of you made that?
That's correct.
Was that okay?
Came to a conclusion on which was the top candidate, and at that point.
Candidate or candidates? Did you have one only? Did you together chose this person? You had 3 that you interviewed. Okay.
We did a second interview on 3 candidates.
Okay.
So we did that. We came to a conclusion on the number 1 candidate.
Did you come to that together, or did you make that by yourself?
Knowing that he was leaving the community, City Manager Levitt allowed me to make kind of the final decision. He did give me his input on which he thought was the top candidate, and so he did provide input to me on that. But he did allow me to make the final decision. And then at that point in time, then we started the background check on March 22nd and completed it on April 3rd. And then we kind of moved forward from there. So the timing was such. Honestly, it didn't occur to me, and it didn't occur to. I don't want to think for him, but the City Manager Levitt to include the council in that process.
So the decision was actually made April 3rd. I mean, but that you'd already. I just wanted to get the time frame so I understand, because we just got the announcement yesterday, there was the press release was put out yesterday.
Correct.
You knew we were going to have a discussion about this Monday night because we talked about it, and I was actually surprised to see the press release because I thought maybe we would have some conversation before that press release came out.
Well, and so the offer to the candidate went out April 9th.
It went out April 9th, the offer letter.
The offer went out. It was accepted on April 10th. The employment agreement went out on April 18th, and it was executed on her part on April 22nd. And the offer,
So it was executed Monday? Meaning she signed it Monday?
Correct. I had gotten it back on Monday. She signed it Monday. So the offer letter, the only contingency it had in there was a background check. So I did leave it to the city attorney on whether, at that point in time, because we made the offer, we were fairly committed to making the position unless the candidate did not successfully complete a background.
Okay. Has there been, and I appreciate that information, that timeframe. At what point in the process is it appropriate to, obviously we could change it and have the city council be involved in the interview process, I get that. But in your mind, what point is it appropriate to involve the council or notify them when something at this level is decision at this level is being made?
So there may be two questions. I think if the council wants to be involved in the process, then I think somewhere at the second interview level would be the appropriate place to involve the council. Notification, we can certainly notify on these at-will positions, we can certainly notify the council at every step along the way. Start of recruitment closes, number of candidates that have been, without identifying them, number of candidates involved in the first oral board, number of candidates that are being invited back for a second interview. And if the council wants to be involved, that would be the point where they can provide that input to the city manager. When an offer letter goes out, we can provide status report to the council at every step along the way.
Gotcha. So in your mind, at least in this instance, we get notified when the press release goes out. Is that what you intended, or what was your thought about this whole process?
Well, in this particular position, it was in hindsight's always the best. Probably in hindsight, I should have notified the council when the offer was being made, at least at that point in time. I waited until I had a signed contract because in my belief is I don't have a binding agreement until I have a signed contract. So when I received the signed contract on April 22nd, I knew I had a legal and binding document that was going to take place. So I really was waiting until that point.
And were others made aware before April 22nd that an offer had been made to her?
I'm sorry?
Were others in the city or elsewhere in the community been made aware that an offer had been made previous to that time?
I didn't notify anyone.
Okay. 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 I just had a couple questions. Let me just talk in general, just fiscal responsibility. Has the city ever had a hiring freeze, and do we have one, or have we had one? I mean, and this is not related to this specific position, but I just want to understand, especially as I'm reading, for instance, the newspaper about what Oxnard is faced with, and last year, Oxnard faced $7 million budget gap. This year, the city's prepared a upcoming spending plan $9 million, and they talked about what they're doing. And I'm thinking, this sounds scarily familiar as I'm reading it. And going on with the mayor's quote, what's different is that the city cut costs last year by keeping many positions vacant, while this next budget will likely be slashed in more painful ways. It's going to be the most difficult financial year because it's going to necessitate cuts that we've never had before, et cetera. So anyway, I'm reading this and nervous, and I'm thinking, this sounds familiar. Is a hiring freeze anything that's been discussed? What is this?
Well, I read that article too, and my immediate thought was, thank goodness we're not Oxnard. We go into the budget freezing a number of positions. The current budget year we're in, there's almost $1 million worth of frozen positions, and then we also budget for salary savings that's going to take place through attrition of employees that are going to be leaving, as well as some soft freezes that we're doing out there. City Manager Levitt, and I would continue, we approve the recruitment for every position, and we analyze whether that position is, coming back to Councilmember Levitt's discussion, is whether that position is necessary and whether we need to feed it. So I think we always have a freeze, and we analyze every position whether it's necessary.
And so, okay, so in a sense, you're saying, well, there is a hiring freeze.
Yeah. Yes.
But that you look at. And I'm not advocating this necessarily right now, but the city council could also say, okay, we're recognizing this hiring freeze. Whenever an exception is made, we would like to be notified or be aware of that. Is that?
We can certainly, I believe, maybe not, there are status memos that come out from our Human Resources Division of recruitments that are taking place and new hires, and I thought that was actually going to the city council. If it isn't, we can certainly make sure that you do receive it. But on a hiring freeze, it can be punitive because we may be losing a position that is critical to the city that really needs to be refilled. And so we would want to be able to look at that, but and that's exactly what we do.
Well, and maybe we could color it and not call it hiring. There's a hiring.
It's a soft freeze.
A soft freeze.
As it's called, and that's what we currently have now.
Okay, but we could be part of that. Okay, if the council decided to do so, we could choose to actually say, well, every time an exception is made, we'd love to be party to that decision if we wanted to. It might be a hassle for you. I'm not advocating it necessarily. I'm just brainstorming right now, trying to understand what some of our different options might be.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it for my questions right now. I'm not advocating anything right this moment, but I just want to.
That's fine. Mr. Judge.
Yes, I have a question for the city attorney. As of right now, it seems that this meeting was called, and the consensus that I'm getting from the city council right now is they're not really happy with this hire. So at this point in time, could the city council stop this hire?
At this point, in my opinion, there's been an offer, an acceptance, and we have a binding contract.
Okay, but contracts can be broken.
Yes.
Okay. So it could happen if the city council so choose. We could make a motion and vote on canceling this hire until a more appropriate time when we do have a permanent city manager.
Obviously, there would be legal ramifications.
Okay. That's my question.
That's your question. Okay, I'll do my comments and maybe questions. First of all, I think I was I know I was the one that caused this meeting, call it an emergency meeting, whatever you want. And it was based on, I learned from an outside consultant, and what I was told, which may not be accurate, is that it had been announced to staff that there was a new environmental services director chosen, selected, hired. So I contacted Brian and said, what's going on? And basically got that, yes, but there had been no announcement. But yes, they in fact had offered a position to someone regarding the environmental services. And I felt that I didn't have enough knowledge as a council member, and I felt that the rest of the council most likely did not have the knowledge either. And from the standpoint that I was, it was like, okay, wait, this is a $200,000 a year hire. We're in a budget time. I would like to hear the reason for this hiring and the justification for it, which there very well could be. I'm not saying there wasn't. I'm just saying, but I wanted to sit down and hear that, like has been said here today, I wanted to hear that, oh, wait, we closed down a division and we added it to the existing, and now the span of control is too big. We need a manager to handle that. So that's the dialogue that I wish that had occurred, and I expressed that. And I wanted to very quickly have a meeting so the rest of the council, because of the Brown Act, we can't communicate these things. And I thought it was very important that the council knew exactly what was going on and verify that no one had been informed and had dialogue regarding the replacement of this position. And So my whole thing was just a lack of communications, and at a budget time when we seem to be very, I got, in my election, and I'm sure everybody else's, they report back to their constituency that we're going to be very fiscally responsible and keep a very close eye on it. And I felt that just didn't give me an opportunity to agree or disagree with it. And that's how this came about, and that's why I called for a meeting immediately, because I think there's other positions in the works that are posted, and I have concerns about at least one of them for the cost of the position versus the position itself, the value of that position. And so I'd like to have that discussion. So I figured by bringing this up, having the entire council be aware of this, that it would force conversation. And now if we go back in history, I'll go back a little bit. There's one thing that I don't like at all, and it's not the fault of this city, but when we look at any position, we run out and we compare us to other cities, and we compare what the other cities are paying that particular position. And in my mind, I go, it doesn't matter what they're paying. What matters is how much revenue are we receiving? Can we afford to pay those costs? And yes, that can get you in trouble, because trouble from the standpoint of, let's say hypothetically, Moorpark pays their police chief $100,000 a year, and so therefore we're going to get a new police chief. We have to pay him $100,000. But let's say hypothetically, Moorpark has a $100 million a year budget, and we have a $50 million a year budget. Big difference there. So I've always thought that as being lopsided, just to compare what other cities pay. If you look at Thousand Oaks, they have a much larger revenue base when their auto center and the mall and that type of thing. Nothing against Thousand Oaks at all. It's just they happen to have more money. And because they pay a high dollar for one of their positions, I certainly don't think that means that we have to. And the argument, of course, could be that we won't be able to get the same caliber of person. I compare that, going out on a limb here, to I think you can go to a small town America and you can get fine doctors, teachers, firefighters, police officers that make far less money than doctors that, say, are working in Beverly Hills, firefighters in Beverly Hills, teachers in Beverly Hills. It's just, to me, not the way to compare. What I've seen in my work history is establishing a list, and there's no urgency. So in other words, we recruited, and there's other recruitments going on, I believe. That doesn't mean you have to hire. I think it's very common for, especially the public sector, to have a list. You put somebody on a list, and that means they're qualified, they're somewhat approved, and then when you're ready and you've done all your homework, then you draw from that list. And if the folks still remain on the list, so I don't see any urgency, and there seemed to be a little bit of urgency here, and I think that's probably because the previous city manager left and the process was on board. But I just don't like the urgency factor. So I think that's pretty much it. My whole goal was to get us all informed and all to have better communications and to have that input, because I think it's our responsibility as council members to look at the position. I don't want to be put in the position of looking at the individual candidates. I don't think that's necessary. But I definitely believe that we should be at least consulted with the need to hire a particular position, and take a look at it so we can ask those questions that our voters expect us to ask. And that is this definitely needed? Is this the right way to go? Or if you have the management position that's going to cost us $200,000 a year, would we be better off hiring 2 non-management positions at $50,000 each? Something to that. Will that cure the problem? And it's just a question that we can ask, and then it's up to the city manager, in this case, to tell us why that would not work. And we move forward from there. That's my comments for this time. Any others?
I guess, go ahead, David.
Yes.
My comment is if the city council, I'm sorry, I forget this thing works now. I can see the city council going forward from here and maybe forming a policy as into the future. The interim city manager wishing to appoint would, inform the city council in a timely manner, maybe have the city council involved in the secondary interview of the people being considered for the job. But to follow up on my question, I don't think it would be prudent for us to try to stop the hire that's already been offered because of the fact it would open us up to a lawsuit, most likely, and cost the city more money. When this position was, and I was reminded by another staff member earlier that this position had been out for recruitment for some time. So I also understand there's conflicts within the organization about the person that was hired. And if that's one of the situations, we might want to look at maybe varying the scope of her responsibility or of the responsibility of the office so that that doesn't affect the organization as it sits right now.
Just want to add that the scope of the agenda is pretty narrow. That would have to come back. Any further discussion on that would have to come back.
All right. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to agree with Councilmember Judge. I think it's not necessarily our place to get too micromanaging into the personnel issue. That is what we hire a city manager for. But as the interim, maybe a good idea if it's a department head or one of these at-will employees, that second interview type that city council be involved at that level. And I think we've already pretty much established that we want better communication. So I think that's probably the key, is that the city council is notified in a timely manner. But again, we all have to keep a secret. So that's what I think. Thank you.
And if I could, I'd like to agree with Councilmember Judge. It's not fair to at this point, bring, I'll say harm, I don't know if that's the right word. I don't think that that's appropriate to bring that to the individual that has evidently already put in notice and has accepted. To me, it's not about individual. It's about the communications. I think that's the bottom line. And so I agree that to try stopping it is not the appropriate move, but to change the process is the appropriate move. And I'd just like to point out, just for the record, that I was consulted by then City Manager Mike Siddell when Peter Lyons was hired or promoted, and also when Summer Barwick was. I was consulted at that time. And I have to say that one of those I recommended no hire, and it went forward. And I don't feel offended by that because I still agree that the city manager has the right to choose the individual. The position had already been determined as needed. And so I was fine with it. So, that's the way it goes. So I guess I'm just trying to point out that I don't think we should get down to picking the individuals. I don't think that's appropriate, but we could certainly identify and look at budget-wise and justify the need for a particular position.
I'd like to address the comments of the residents who came here, obviously with very little notice on a Thursday afternoon to come down here. And the concern is, and I understand that we can and probably will set policy henceforth. And I understand the legal issues as well, having a legal background, that it would be a breach of contract. However, I've also worked for large organizations where you've hired the wrong person for the wrong reasons. And we ended up having to, the damage that was caused to the institution, to the school district by having the wrong person who, through whatever process that was gone through, was hired, then caused damage, and the policies and the impacts that were set forth by the person who was in that position for however long, for 6 months, for 2 years, or 5 years, caused, in some regards, damage that still has not been fixed. So every time, my employer hires someone that is not qualified or is not been through the process that they need to go through, then we end up paying a severance package. We keep them on. We say we don't want to get sued for breach of contract, and I understand what the legal position is, that we already offered the position. It would be a breach of contract. So we keep them on because we don't want to get sued for breach of contract. So then we keep them on, we pay their salary, and then it ends up not working out. Then we have to pay anyways a severance package. And I don't know if that would be, cheaper or better than the damage that was caused to undo, having that person in that position. And at some point, we have to be held accountable to our residents who are asking us here, are you going to do things the right way? Are you going to keep punting the ball? And it seems like we have to make a decision if we are going to continue to do that. We could not breach contract. I understand what the implications of there are and that there are financial ones and legal ones as well. And the legal ones are financial because we would have to, use staff time and possibly pay damages for breach of contract. But I also understand that if we continue and move forward down this path, that could also cost us money as well. And there could be implications to the city and to the employees. And again, the appearance of, are we doing things in the right way? And can we rectify that? And if we're at a point at which we can rectify it, then let's attempt to rectify it. Is there a cost? Yes, there's always the cost. There's always consequences to our actions. But is it worth it for us to truly be accountable to our residents and let them know that, hey, yes, things didn't happen the way we wanted them to happen, but we're going to ensure in the future that it does, and we're going to fix this mistake. And there may be a cost, because the taxpayers are the ones who are ultimately paying the cost, because they're the ones that are paying the taxes, and they're the ones that elected us. So we have to figure out if we have, at least, with 3 days' notice, 3 residents who came down who thought it was important enough to come down here and do this and give their input, then I think we need to give some deference to that input that has been given. With regard to the qualifications, I understand what you are saying, Mayor Mashburn, in terms of, can we save money? And I agree with that. Sometimes, you can hire 2 people for less, money, and they can do those different jobs. And, but sometimes it's also sometimes you get what you pay for. It's also the quality, right? I earn a lot more as a National Board Certified teacher, but the outcomes that I provide as a National Board Certified teacher have actually been researched, that just by being in the classroom, students get an extra 2 months of math instruction, an extra month of English instruction. So there is research showing that I am a highly effective teacher, more so, and I'm worth the money, the extra money that I get, than a regular teacher. And no, I don't teach in Beverly Hills. I teach, in Reseda, where I feel like I am the most effective. So I agree with your comment that, you can go to a small town and get an excellent teacher, and, they could be better than the one in Beverly Hills, and vice versa. But you also, have to look at what are the outcomes. And one of the things that I am asked is, how do I know that you're an effective teacher? And I have to provide some quantifiable data. And so when we hire for these, high-level positions, which really guide the city in terms of where we're going, then we have to ask, how do we know that you've been effective? What have you how can you quantify what you've accomplished? Not just something that you slap on a resume, but how can you quantify, if you're the economic director, that the city made more money? If you're, the environmental services director, that, you've helped protect the environment. I'm just making stuff up there. But how do you quantify that? Because everything can be quantified. So, making sure that we are hiring the people who have the qualifications, and that's our job, is to provide those guidelines. So I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh. We should not be micromanaging, because, that's what we hire a city manager for. However, we should be providing guidance in terms of what are our goals as a city council, what would we like to see, and when the city manager hires a department head, what is it that we're looking for? And if we can provide that guidance by having that committee, by having 2 city council members on the hiring committee, those department heads, and letting, those 2 council members know, hey, these are our goals, just like we set forth, right, at our city council retreat. These are our goals as a city council. This is what we would like to see and move forward. These are our priorities for the next year. Then we can provide that guidance so that when our city manager does hire these department heads, they're aware of what we're looking for. And again, looking at quantifiable ways to prove that that is the best person for that job.
Yeah, I have a question. What was the formula used? Obviously, there's contracts, so now that's been signed, so there's a dollar amount. How was that determined, the pay scale? Is it like I was saying, just compared to other cities, or?
You're talking in general. In general?
Oh, yeah, we can't talk specific.
Yeah.
That's from range.
In general, we look at the range, and then it's a negotiated process.
Okay. That was a good answer.
Well, and there's also workplace environment. I would take a job at a school where I got paid less if it was a wonderful, supportive environment. Whereas I could work at a school where I get paid a lot more, but I leave crying every day because it's such a horrible place to work. So workplace environment counts for a lot as well. So it's not always about compensation, like you said, Mayor Mashburn. Sometimes it's about the workplace environment, and the benefits package is not always about medical benefits, but other benefits as well. So those are things that we can also use, that we are an asset. It is an asset to live in Simi Valley. It is a wonderful place to live. It is a wonderful place to work. And to the extent where we can ensure that and make sure that, whoever is hired is supported, and that our employees feel that as well, all of our employees, at every level. I think that's what is important for us to maintain. And I guess that's what the larger concern is here, that we make sure that our employees are, able to do their job at every level so that they can provide that high level of service to our residents. And that's ultimately what the concern is here, is that we improve the outcomes for our community.
I do have one question for the attorney, if that's all right. A contract's been signed, et cetera. Have we signed ours? I mean, when it was offered, basically, can we counter? Can you have another contract where, in effect, you say, okay, the position, we know you've signed this, but the position has now been changed, and that it's going to be considered an interim and will be evaluated for 6 months. Is that something that can be? I mean, can you send another contract and do that? I mean, what are the ramifications of that? That's breach of contract, but it's a carrot, or is that? I just want to understand.
Well, I just want to go back to, I'm a little concerned about going too far afield as to the scope of what's on the agenda.
Okay.
And so it's possible to maybe come back with that. We can come back at a future date with that on the specific agenda and have a discussion about that.
Well, no, don't apply it to this person. Apply it to a director in general. If it's been hired, and then the council decides we want it to be part of the process, it's been done in an interim, it should have been done differently, or whatever, for whatever reason. Can another contract be sent out saying, we've changed the scope of our desire for this position and envision it now as an interim position? That just in general, it's not specific to this one.
Right. I think generally, once you've entered into a contract, the terms and conditions have already been specified. However, parties are generally free to re-enter into a new negotiation or further discussion. There could be further amendments to a contract.
Okay, so amendments could be made to a contract.
Well, I think the parties have to be free to negotiate and discuss that. I think we already, they're generally, contracts are basically already bound and they're solid. And the other party has to agree to be willing to make a modification to that contract.
And how is that propagated? I mean, how you call them up and say, we're thinking about, I mean, I'm just curious how that works.
Going into a lot of legal questions and giving advice. And so I just want to be careful with that. But generally, to respond to your question, you just negotiate and you make a phone call.
Okay, fair enough, okay.
Okay, I'm asking Council, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, because this provision says at-will employment status on page 5 of the attachment. And it says, they are at-will employees, and it includes all these directors, all these department head classifications, including, Director of Public Works, Environmental Services, Administrative Services, on and on. So my question is, if they're an at-will employee, who fires them?
That would be the city manager.
Okay, and has there been an employee in that position, a department head classification in that category that's there on that page, that has been fired by the city manager? And was it of the city manager's own volition, or was it at the direction of the city council?
In my years here, I know of one director that has been fired, and that was at the direction of that was a decision by the city manager.
Okay, are there, and I'm not sure whether or not you know the answer to this question, have other city councils directed city managers to fire department heads or encourage them to do so?
I would not have that information.
Has there ever been a process by which the city council was not happy with the job of the city manager because they did not remove an at-will employee?
Not that I'm aware of. In this city, not that I'm aware of.
But it could happen.
Oh, it certainly could, sure. Given the longevity of city managers here, I'm pretty certain it hasn't happened here.
And if you are an at-will employee, according to this definition, what reason can be given? Can it just be lack of appropriate job performance, or I assume that the at-will employees are reviewed, or given a review every 6 months or a year or something like that? And
you would go through an annual evaluation. Every at-will employee has a contract, so the termination or severance would have to happen in accordance with that contract, either with cause or without cause.
Right, it says any may be removed from their position at any time for any reason or for no reason, with or without cause and without right of appeal. That's what's stated here.
But they would get a severance?
Every at-will employee will have a contract, so the city would have to follow through with that contract. I know the standard contracts do have a severance clause in them.
So I guess the question would be, is the severance clause, and this comes back to the comment that I had brought up, once you hire someone, even if is it more expensive, if we're being fiscally responsible, right? Is it more expensive to breach the contract, or is it more expensive to fire them at will for whatever reason, the at-will employee later on, and then pay the severance package? So if I determine, it's the severance package is, $1 million, which is a lot of money, but let's just say it's $1 million for the severance package, and the lawsuit would cost $500,000, then from a fiscally responsible perspective, right, it would be better.
So are you referring to an existing employee, or?
No, I'm just saying in general, like when we weigh options, right, that's what we do. We look at what is the fiscal impact of the decisions that we're making.
You certainly would, but if you have a department director that is not functioning in that position that needs to be removed, the city manager should remove them.
But then they would be entitled to a severance package.
They would, but if it's detrimental to the organization, you need to remove that person.
But some of the separation packages have specifics. Remember the contract we just looked at?
Mm-hmm.
If there was malfeasance or
Sure.
anything like that, then they don't qualify for their severance.
Correct.
So it could go either way depending on our reasoning, or the reasoning of the city.
Okay. Yeah, I know we can't go into specifics. So. I have more follow-up questions, but I can't go into that.
Can I ask one more stupid question? Well, not stupid, excuse me.
No.
Question of who is our city treasurer? City treasurer. City treasurer. Because that's a position here that we talks about.
It's the,
that we.
You'll be the Director of Administrative Services.
The city treasurer is considered the director of administration. So the reason I ask that, I'm sorry, this is totally off topic, but just because.
Right, in page 3.
Because basically, page 3, it says, our city manager in his has no authority over the city attorney or the city treasurer.
We don't have one.
Yeah,
So-
we don't have one. So the person kind of, when this was written and the municipal code was put in place, I think it was envisioned that the city could have a city treasurer, a position of city treasurer. Right now, the administrative services director acts as a city treasurer, but doesn't really carry that title.
So you have no authority over that person? I
may not have authority over that person, but I have authority over the director of administrative services.
I think it refers to an elected city treasurer, like their
But the city attorney, but the city attorney's not elected in our
No,
case.
they're hired by the city council. They report to the city council.
Right, so that's, I guess, anyway, okay,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough. Sorry.
Good catch.
Yeah, we haven't necessarily updated all of the municipal code based upon as it was originally created.
Further discussions?
Well, we can't.
Do we have, going back to what you were saying, are you recommending, Councilmember Luevanos, are you recommending a certain course of action specific to a specific case, or is this now time for
It's a difficult
motions?
decision to make because part of it is based on, the fiscal impact, and it's hard to do that when we don't have the specifics, nor can we discuss the specifics. And we're between a rock and a hard place without having all the details. If we have the details, if I had the details knowing what the fiscal impact would be, that would make it an easier decision. But we don't.
Or we could call another meeting to have that discussion.
Can we do that, City Attorney? Yes?
Well,
Wouldn't we ultimately be able to get that information?
We could, and call another meeting and could discuss it then if we wanted.
And we can provide a memo to council boxes regarding the fiscal impact. I will say, like I said, we're putting together the budget. We will presenting to you a balanced budget, which will delineate all the fiscal impacts of the city and how that all complies. So, we can certainly do a separate memo to council boxes regarding the fiscal impact of the hires that we've made recently. We can present it to you as part of the council budget document and our presentation to the council on the budget for the upcoming year. Whatever's council pleasure.
Again, it's a difficult, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because we're in the position where the contract has already been offered, it's already been accepted. With regards to us being accountable to our residents, I think we need to, and I don't want to use that quote, but I think we need to be accountable. And, I don't know if we need to make a motion, but if this is the motion, then the motion would be to terminate to breach the contract that was just offered.
She made a motion to breach the contract that was just offered. Sorry, he didn't hear your.
Sorry. That's not on the agenda. I mean,
Okay.
there would be a subject that would be ripe for discussion today because it hasn't been specified in the
In
agenda.
the agenda, okay,
Yeah.
so we have to have another meeting then.
Yep,
Okay.
on that specific issue.
So we could discuss the general amendment, or general desires. For instance, you had mentioned, there's different things we've discussed as ways we can modify
The policies.
the policies. And then Mr. Gabler could give us in our boxes tomorrow. We could also call another meeting in 2 days if you wanted to discuss that, and we could have that information by then, if you desire to.
Yeah, I would.
We originally, I think, talked about a motion that would, just for the directors and assistant managers, that we change or add a clause that says they will not be hired without consultation with the council. Now, I can. Oh, say that again. Oh, no, no. Okay, I'm fine. Pretty legal. At any rate, I would like to see a motion that just modifies the policy to where when you're hired director or assistant city manager, whatever's on the list.
Any of the at-will?
Any at-will.
Yeah, at-wills, that there would be discussion with the council, and I think the best way to do that is in public and as a whole council. Just make an agenda item for a meeting.
Would you do that, or would you have one or two of the council members be part of the? I almost think it might be best to have a council member to be part of the last interviewing process, so they are privy to the discussion, the interviews with the final 3 or final 4, and then maybe before a decision is made, have it.
Okay. So what we're looking at there, in my opinion, and Attorney can help us, is that's 2 motions, and the only one that I would like to see at this time is simply that there's a discussion for the position, not the individuals. So, which would mean not taking and saying part of the council is on the interview process. That could be a different process, which would be fine. But I'm just saying
So
that
you see 2 possible amendments.
to set policy or to make a offer or to recruit for at-will employees, that has to be discussed with the council in open.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
And again, I want to make it very clear, I'm not interested in being the one selecting the individuals, personally.
I think I can do it right. So you would like any at-will employment opening before any recruitment starts, that it be brought to the city council for discussion for fulfilling the position?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, I'm confused now, because I thought it was at the second interview process where city council members
That's a
would be
second,
part of.
that's another
motion.
Yes.
That's another layer.
Okay, then at that, the one that you just mentioned, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, I think there should be input from
well, that can be
Mrs.
done
Hirsch?
in public, right?
Yeah, from the, well, here's the thing. You could get public input, but if you're an employee who works in that department and wants to give input, does that make sense? That's kind of awkward for them to come and do
Yeah,
that.
and I can make the motion, right? Yeah, and I normally try not to make motions, but I'd be happy to make that motion.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think the people who work in the department should have some input or say.
We can't make them, though.
No, just encourage them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I was going to say, we can't make them.
No, we're not going to force them, but just to encourage employees within the department who would like to have input.
So I am hearing 3 different possible motions.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can quantify them. The one that Councilmember Luevanos said initially, way back when, was that she felt that that there should be no permanent positions made by an interim city manager, that they should be provisional in nature going forward. I heard that motion. I heard the motion that Mayor Mashburn is suggesting, which is that before any of these at-will positions be gone forth, that the council be party to the discussion of whether it's important, what we would like to have, how we would like to have, whether that position is necessary, and the qualifications are what we're looking for that position. So that's the second thing. And the third thing I'm hearing is that there is desire for council to be somehow involved in the selection interviewing as a possibility. Now, I'm not sure if mayor's in favor of that, but that's the third
Yeah,
motion that I'm.
that's
So those are
pretty much
three different motions
agreed.
that I'm
So-
hearing.
If I could clarify though, are we planning to do all of our management hiring here on the dais from now on? Because that's what I'm hearing in this motion. I mean, if you're going to make a motion to change the policy that we have right now, I would suggest it be limited to when there's an interim city manager hiring managers for his departments. Maybe that goes to the city council. But once we're in a position where we have a permanent city manager that we've all hired, because that is the person that we hire along with the city attorney, they should have some autonomy in picking the managers for their departments. That shouldn't be something that we get involved in down to that minutia, unless it's coming into like a secondary interview where maybe two council members might be involved in that process, like picking the police chief, like we did with the police chief. We had two council members sat on the board for the second interview of the police chief. That could be the same thing with this position that was hired also. But, I mean, it sounds like you're looking to pick employees here on the dais.
No, let me try, I think you read, if you're referring to my motion, I think you read me wrong. I don't want to talk about the individuals. I just want to talk about, is there the need and is there the budget to cover that need? In other words, if, I'm going to be goofy here, if the city manager suddenly decides, whether he's interim or permanent, suddenly decides he wants to put a director of lawn mowing at City Hall, I don't want to choose the person that's going to operate the lawnmower. I want the council to look at it and say, yes, there's a need for that position, or no, there is not a need for that position. But I agree with you. I don't want to get into the minutia either. And the city manager should be the one that determines, or his designate.
I hear what Council Member Judge is saying, so can I make a motion that I think we all,
Okay, do you want me to withdraw my motion so you can make a motion?
no, go, so who seconded the motion?
I'll second it.
Now we can have discussion.
Okay, which one did you just second? Okay,
So Mayor Mashburn, your motion was for city council to be part of the second interview process?
No.
no,
No, okay.
no, that's a different motion.
Okay,
Mine is simply,
Let me take a shot at it.
okay,
All
We're making the soup.
all recruitments for at-will positions need to get city council approval prior to the start of the recruitment.
That's pretty much it.
that's,
So we can discuss, yeah.
yeah,
The feasibility of filling the position or not.
that's good. That made it simple.
okay.
That's
That
pretty much
makes
it. Okay.
Okay,
Short and sweet.
Second.
Oh, I can
Already
make a motion.
seconded.
she already seconded.
Okay, perfect.
Brian just reworded it for
There you
us.
Oh, there you go.
That was the mayor's motion.
It's okay.
Okay.
I call the
we have
question.
Sounds good.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
Can you read the motion one more time?
Yes,
Just- I'd
interim
like to
city
hear-
manager
read the
Gabler,
motion
could you
one more
please
time.
read the motion again?
Certainly.
For clarification.
Recruitments for all at-will positions in the city of Simi Valley require city council approval prior to the recruitment starting.
Okay,
I call the question?
call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
I think I could take a shot at the second one. City council, and you can, if you want to qualify it to mayor, mayor pro tem, or leave it to the city manager usually we go in a hierarchy. Mayor, mayor pro tem, and then down through the seniority on council members. City council will be consulted in the final selection of any at-will positions.
All of city council or just a couple of the city council members?
Have to be two.
Two city,
At least two
a
city
subcommittee of
council
two
members.
city council members will be consulted in the final selection of an at-will employee.
Because I also agree with Councilman Judge that we don't want to be hiring from the dais, and we do hire city managers. So if we do 2 instead of all of city
Yeah,
council.
that's-
Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
just 2, and we would include you in that second
And
interview.
when you
process.
say.
Oral interview.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, when you say when you say in the hiring, that would be in the final round of interviewing?
Yes,
Like an oral board.
So I think that
almost.
should probably be in the motion as well, then, that it's clear that.
final round of interviews.
I-
Let me, Brian, I have a question. When you said using the hierarchy,
Oh, wait,
And-
is there a second of the motion? So we can have
I'm
discussion?
sorry?
Is there-
I'm
Oh, we haven't made the motion yet?
It's not been
Okay.
officially
I was
made. Brian
suggesting
gave it
one.
to us as what it might
Yeah.
be, so.
Okay, but I have a question regarding because you made mention of the hierarchy thing.
So normally when, what I suggest in a position like this is we would start with the mayor and mayor pro tem. If perhaps the mayor pro tem or the mayor is on vacation, or not able to, or says, I don't want to, then we would go to the next senior council member and work our way through kind of the hierarchy.
That makes it easier than trying to.
Right, yeah, so we would start at mayor, mayor pro tem. If one of those 2 can't make it, we would go to the next senior council member. And if that person can't participate, then we go to the next senior.
It's okay if I'm last.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's okay with that.
But at some point, you'll be mayor pro tem maybe, so, you never know.
That's right, it rotates.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, Ruth,
So,
Do we have a
So I
motion?
will make that motion, but I'd like to have it restated, just so that I'm sure that it's, that it's clear. Brian's trying to make sure he gets it clear. He's
Yeah,
writing it
make sure
down
I get it
very
clear.
carefully, so that I'll make that motion. Is that all right? Yeah, I'll make this one, since I discussed it.
So the city council will be, city council will be consulted at the time of final interviews. City council will be consulted, give me a second here.
2 city council members.
Thank you. Two city council members will be consulted, in the selection
About one
of the,
employees.
of an at-will employee at the time of a second interview, or final interviews. Probably final.
Final interviews.
How about,
Second,
I mean,
They would
in
be
the
part.
contingency.
Yeah, the question is it when consulting, is that clear that they're going to be part of the interviewing board?
Yeah, that's my question. When you say consultant, or do you want them to be part of the?
how about
'Cause-
included instead of consulted?
Included, I would like it, included would be
Included in
good,
the
because I think ideally they
second
would be part of that final interviewing panel.
Would you like to amend her motion?
I second the friendly amendment to the motion.
and did we want to specify mayor and mayor pro tem, or just leave it?
You can probably leave it, but know that it's understood that it's going to be the mayor
Leave it because
and pro tem.
I'm fine.
protocol to go mayor pro.
Right.
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you go,
Mayor,
if you
but
say
however,
mayor, mayor pro tem,
they're not
and they're not available, then you
Right,
can't
yeah,
choose the other city
yeah.
council members.
Let me take another shot at it, sorry. City council shall participate in final interviews of all at-will employees.
You say it one more time, two city?
2 city council members shall participate in final interviews of at-will employees.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I think I have the wording for my motion, Brian, so I might save you some time. I move that at-will positions be provisional appointments when the city has an interim city manager. I move that at-will positions be provisional appointments when we have an interim city manager.
I'm thinking we don't need that anymore because we just said it has to come to us first.
What the difference is, actually, I'll second it just so we can discuss it. I'll second it just for the discussion's sake. As I understand it, the difference is what Councilmember Luevanos was saying is that often permanent managers like to have people that they like to surround themselves with people they know work well, et cetera, and it would be a courtesy for them to have that opportunity to bring in their people. And that if an interim makes that decision, even with or without council membership input, they are denied that opportunity, I guess. Maybe that's.
But you can only provisionally appoint somebody that's currently an employee. You can't hire somebody, say, I'm just hiring you for 6 months.
Then it would,
I don't know.
well, I guess then they're not provisional, they're considered interim then also. Is that the different, I don't
You
know.
don't normally do that from outside. You would normally,
Yeah, I would say, in deference to Ms. Hirsch, city managers don't usually come in and clean house. It's fairly uncommon. I can't say it never happens, because it does, but it is fairly uncommon. You come in and you work with the staff that's there. Because they're at-will employees, they can, if there is a difficulty between the city manager and that at-will employee, the new city manager may choose to get rid of them. Then they would deal with those things. So that is certainly possible. But to Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh's point, the city council has to approve the recruitment of any at-will employee. If you do happen to have an interim city manager at the time, it may be a position where the council agrees that it's critical to open up that recruitment because you will be part of at least the final interviews. But the council would have the decision whether to move forward with that recruitment or not, whether it's an interim city manager or a permanent city manager.
And the council would also have 2 members on the final.
That's correct, if it gets that far.
Okay, Councilmember Kavanaugh, you said something about provisional?
or I said, and following up on Brian's thing is, or the council at that time could say, let's do a provisional appointment. If we,
Correct.
yeah, so
You
that
certainly
would
could.
kind of tie it all in. So it would still come to us first.
I
I would say, do you have somebody that can fill that position for 6 months? Let's give it a shot and see, maybe we don't need to fill it permanently, so that we would have that option to discuss with the city manager.
Okay, the attorney would like to say something.
Oh, sorry, are we getting too off?
No, we're okay. I just want to add that I think what we're doing here is giving staff policy direction.
Okay.
We would have to come back with proposed ordinances.
Okay.
So, as I understand it, that's what we're doing is policy direction.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess my concern with that is, I'm sorry, do you want to?
No, go ahead.
My concern is, the severance, we just talked about the severance, is if you don't make it provisional, then, are they automatically entitled to severance? If you have the interim, even with the direction of city council, and then we get a permanent, and then they decide, no, we don't want that person, for whatever reason, this is not my style, or, it just doesn't work, the chemistry, whatever, then, are we on the hook for the severance? And that's why I'm hoping the provisional, and I'm not sure, I'm asking for direction from our city attorney, would that avoid the severance? I'm hoping to lessen the financial impact. That's what I'm hoping to avoid.
Well, I think that's why I'm suggesting perhaps maybe some direction. We can come back with a staff report and propose
Okay.
ordinances to give you some more specifics.
So I'm requesting staff report for direction on that, to find out what the fiscal impact of that would be.
Okay, so you want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I withdraw my motion until we get more direction from staff.
Okay. Anybody else have comments, questions?
I think the last question then is Councilmember Luevanos' question, whether we wanted to have another meeting to discuss the specific of a specific position. And that was her,
Yes.
I think that would probably be the last discussion, right?
Okay, would that necessitate a special meeting, or can that be
Ask the city attorney.
at a regular council meeting?
I would recommend a regular council meeting.
Okay, so we'll just agendize that. Okay.
And my question, I'm sorry, so that would be agendized, and I just want to understand if it's about a specific position, start date is May 13th, and we are meeting before then. Is that correct? Isn't,
Their next meeting is May 6th.
so it would be agendized on that meeting?
That's not guaranteed because we don't know if staff will be ready and what the agenda prelim information is. So I don't want to,
Well, you're,
we can
because
order it to be.
the start date for this employee is May 13th. You would have to do it before that time.
Right, if we're going to discuss, if I'm understanding what Councilmember Luevanos is saying and recommending, is that she would like to know the terms of the contract or pay, benefits, et cetera, and
Just
then,
that one part. Just
Okay.
that one part of the contract.
and then that would determine whether you want to take different action.
Yeah, I think, because
Gotcha.
we can't make a decision unless we have all the information.
And so that would need to be either a special meeting or a meeting before the person is in position.
Yeah, and I understand the city attorney is directing us to do it May, or suggesting we do it May 6th, at our May 6th meeting? Yes?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what we're asking here. So perhaps we can re-ask what we're trying to accomplish respectfully.
So residents have asked, our constituents have asked for the person who was appointed in that position to be removed, that would put us in breach of contract. I'm asking for information regarding the severance part of the contract to see whether or not it would be, what would be more financially feasible if the severance package would be greater than the cost of the breach of contract.
Well, then I think you can do a special meeting as long as it's properly agendized to discuss that.
Okay. Then
Now,
I-
because that's a meeting about employees, would that be done in closed session or open session?
Closed session, I
It
would
would be
think.
done in closed session.
Okay.
And we would be given information specific to that position beforehand, correct? I mean, that would,
So we're going to receive a report from staff, getting the data on cost, and then we'll meet and see if it makes sense to go forward.
See where we move forward, yeah.
So we're going to have a special closed session meeting.
Can we have a closed session? Is this what
it could be a closed session before May 6th.
Okay. Yeah.
And I might just say to the people in attendance, whenever there's a closed session, just so you understand, we meet here before the closed session starts and invite public comments. So if someone wanted to discuss or speak to that, they could actually, if it was a 5:30 closed session, they can come and say, this is my concern, this is what I want, I don't know, this is what I think you're talking about, or whatever, and then you could make those comments, but then we go into closed session.
Well, it'll be agendized and published on the website, just like all
Correct.
public meetings,
So they
so
can-
there's no change.
You're right, right.
So they're,
I just want to be sure people who are here that might care would know that even if it's a closed session item, they can speak to it in
and
some
that's
setting.
always the case, and it's always
Right,
listed on,
right, right, exactly.
on the agenda.
Exactly.
Okay, so that doesn't take a motion, we just do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Before we adjourn, thank you very much. I think it was a worthwhile meeting. We're making some headway and in full transparency. So thank you very much for coming to this meeting. The meeting is adjourned.